Hello everyone. Thank you for watching our videos. Today we have some more mysterious stories that people wanted to share with us. So we begin.
As a child, I had a friend, a girl 2 years older than me. She was my sister's classmate. Her name was Jane. She was very kind and beautiful. I remember how she and I were spinning, holding hands at the small holiday party at school. And then one autumn in October a misfortune happened to her. That was the first time in my life that someone I knew or loved died. Jane was in the village at her grandmother. Her mother did not allow her to go out late and went somewhere, but her grandmother loved her very much and Jane persuaded her to let her go out with friends. She promised to return home by 23. She and her boy rode along country roads on a moped. Jane was very afraid and always pinched the boy's hands to make him drive slowly. A large lorry drove after them. The driver was drunk and decided to scare them, chase them and ram them. They flew off this moped, the boy died immediately, and Jane laid in a coma for a week with a broken head. All pupils and teachers prayed for her and waited. And then, almost a week later, I had a dream as if Jane came into my room, unbuttoned her blouse and on her body there was a large mark from that lorry tire. I asked in shock, "Jane, what's wrong with you?" She smiled and said, "I died." In the morning I found out that she died just early in the morning, while I was still sleeping. She came to say goodbye. But that's not all. This was the first time in my life that I attended a funeral. I couldn't believe it was her lying there. Everything is like wax, poor girl. When we all said goodbye before lowering the coffin, I became hysterical. I cried and couldn't believe it. I felt so sorry for her. A few years later I had a dream. In the summer I was sitting in a restaurant on an open veranda somewhere by the sea. And then people started jumping up from their seats and shouting, "Look!" I looked at the sky, and there was an angel flying there, a real white angel, translucent, gentle, flying beautifully high, high. And behind him were many, many souls of little children. They flew like cranes. It was like she was leading them along. And I looked closely and see that the angel had seen me and was flying towards me. And then I saw that it was Jane. All white, beautiful. She came down to me and I burst into tears and said, "Jane, is that you? Have you become an angel?" She smiled and said, "Yes, I'm an angel now, I take care of children." So light and beautiful, I felt such kindness from her. She said goodbye to me and they flew away. I was so happy for her. And I never dreamed of her again.
It's a prison, but without an announcement. They lured us here with all sorts of goodies like to help our loved ones, save them and teach them, and then they played with us or fed on our sufferings. You need to understand that you can't help anyone here, and it's generally funny to study here. Use your judgment and get out of here when the game is over. I don't know how or what lured me here, but I remember myself even before I learned to walk upright. My first thought when consciousness came was that I would have to die again, that I would suffer again, but I didn't want to. Apparently I didn't want all this. As a little one I cried a lot about this, although no one had ever told me about death. And I was afraid that I would have to endure the death of my parents, and then my own. It's not death that I'm afraid of. The end is not terrible, but the process of torment and agony is terrible. The desert of the creator of this masterpiece.
There are a lot of non-believers, but I myself experienced clinical death. I was only 26 years old, and I saw the unusual light in the tunnel. I felt easy and nice, while my husband was waiting for the ambulance for me outside. He left our little daughter next to me and when she screamed, "Mom, don't die," she brought me back as if in a vacuum, that was repeated 3 times. I had gastrointestinal bleeding after taking large doses of aspirin. Before that I felt that I was losing consciousness. I managed to say that I feel bad and fell without signs of life. Maybe they started pressing on the chest to resuscitate as best as they could. Blood gushed out of my mouth when I came to my senses. And I heard unusually beautiful music. I woke up covered in blood. And then there were flights into the tunnel. Of course, we can't know everything for sure, but scientists have already proven that we have a soul. My mother died on April 10, 2021. She was ill for a long time. She was old but sane. I often heard her talking to her mother and grandmother who died long time ago. She asked them to bring her coffee and let her eat. She spoke to her sister and brother who also died. The most interesting thing, when my mother was admitted to the hospital about 7 years ago as she had a heart attack, we were in the room and suddenly she felt bad. The doctor and the nurse began to massage the heart. And we stood under the door into the intensive care unit for a long time. When opening the door slightly, the nurse said to prepare for the worst. But in 20 minutes we were invited to the intensive care unit. We carefully approached and she opened her eyes, and I had never seen such happy eyes. Her eyes were radiantly burning with happiness, and this is her story. Regina, it's me. I just saw mother and grandmother who had been in the next world for a long time. She stood at the gate young in a very beautiful hat and dress, and around there were bright, very beautiful flowers. She was holding her hands, saying, Maria, this is her mother's name. Why are you so frightened? Here it's not so scary, don't be afraid. And then my mother asked me, why you cried so hard at the window, why did you walk along the corridor and your husband stroked your hand and shoulder? Mom, how did you see it? She said, I saw it. And she lived for a long time. She said that she was not afraid to die, and that's not all. My mom's birthdays was on May 20th birthday. It was just 40 days after her death. Although we are Catholics, we count 30 days. In the morning when leaving from home I check everything to be switched off, no lights, the balcony door to be closed, and the computer to be turned off. And when I came home the electric stove and the computer were on. But to turn on the stove, one need to turn the knob and no one was at home. That's the story.
I always reminded the unexpected contact with my deceased father shortly after his death. Being half asleep in the morning, I frantically rushed around in some labyrinth of corridors and was constantly looking for some kind of telephone until I found an old antediluvian machine. I pick up the phone, and from there my father's distinct voice, with all its familiar intonations. But even during his lifetime, my quiet father, when he was about to ask something, said that short but meaningful well, and I was carried away. I told him everything about all our living household members, and most importantly about my niece, his granddaughter, who successfully defended her diploma 3 days after his death, that he was looking forward to, but never saw, that happy date. Then it dawned on me. I scream into the phone, Dad, you're dead, you can't talk to me. How does this happen? He answered, it happens. Though he was a strong materialist during his lifetime.
My aunt had breast cancer. They realized it too late, she was dying painfully. She didn't fully accept her death, she kept hoping and said that she would get up, then at some point she calmed down and came to terms with it and just laid there and often asked her friend who was at home if it was Tuesday already. Her friend asked, why do you need this Tuesday? Why are you waiting for this Tuesday? Carol, that's her deceased sister, said that on Tuesday I won't be around. So that's how it all happened. Tuesday came and she died. How could she be sure? Where do they get this information from?
My son died several years ago at the age of 7. His brother was 11 years old. The eldest son began to see and hear his soul in reality within 4 months. At first I did not believe my son, but then I began to check and ask questions that only the deceased son and I could know about, and the answers were correct. He told us about the other world, but to some questions he said that they are not allowed to give an answer. He said that we should not sin and pray for them. It makes them feel good there, they see and hear us. He said that everyone has their own date of death as soon as they are born, and this cannot be avoided.
I want to tell the story of my landlady, where I lived during my student days many years ago. It happened during the Second World War. Her father was at the front. It was winter evening, it was dark outside. Her mother went out into the barn to milk the cow. Children, my landlady and her brother were sitting on the stove and, so as not to be scared, they sang songs. Suddenly the door opened and their father came in. In an overcoat, with a rifle on his shoulder and bald. Taking off the rifle, with the words, "Are you still alive?" he hit his rifle on the floor. The children, frightened, screamed loudly. Mom came running to the screams. Realizing only that someone was coming, she grabbed an axe and ran around the house. She looked all around and found no one. And a month later, a friend of their father came to see them, returning from hospital after being wounded. He told them that their father had died and handed over a photograph of their father. And in the photo, the father was the same as they saw him that evening, in an overcoat, with a gun on his shoulder and bald. The children grew up and moved away, but always, when they met, they reminded this incident.
My dad died of cancer at the end of 2020, after a year and a half of illness. I was very worried, cried, I dreamed of him and said, "It's so good here, it's so beautiful here, everything is fine with me." I somehow felt calm. The first year I saw him in my dreams very often, but rarely now.
I will write another story on the topic of reincarnation. Once I was forced to have an abortion for medical reasons. I couldn't give birth at that time. Some time passed and the youngest daughter brought a kitten into the house, a little kitty. Everyone loved her and she fawned over everyone. Everyone except me. She tried to avoid me. It was offensive, of course, but you can't force yourself to be nice. And then I had a dream. It's as if for some unknown reason I'm killing that kitty. And with such amazing indifference, I'm tearing off her paws, dismembering her, etc., and in a dream I myself am horrified by my actions. I thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I don't feel any emotions when committing a terrible crime. Suddenly the kitty turns into a human baby, a sweet girl, so dear, as if I've known her for 1,000 years. And she said to me, "Mom, you killed me when I was with you, was sitting in your tummy. But I still came to your family so that Kate and Vicky would be my sisters." I woke up in tears in the middle of the night. It became clear where this indifference came from when committing a murder in a dream, because for me at the time of the abortion it was simply a medical manipulation without a moral aspect. That is how we were brought up, having been taught that in the first weeks the fetus is just a collection of cells. And in a dream I destroyed this living creature without a single emotion. The first desire after a nightmare was to press the cat to my chest, hug and ask for forgiveness. I began to approach her with tears in her eyes, but she, as usual, immediately jumped onto the closet and did not allow me to pet her. I realized then that on an energetic level she remembered me as the one who caused her suffering. And of course, remorse and pain flooded my heart. She lived with us for 15 years, like our third child. I sincerely gave her care and affection, without demanding reciprocal warmth in return. I think that we will meet again someday, in some other bodies and other earthly roles.
My daughter Nina died a year ago. 2 weeks before her death, she said that she dreamed that her tooth fell out and there was a lot of blood. I already knew about such dreams and warned all my relatives to be careful. My daughter died soon, she was 41 years old. And she spoke about her dream with such sadness in her eyes. I still cry for her. They say you shouldn't cry, but I don't have strength to endure it. I miss her so much.
I really want to believe that the afterlife exists. My mother passed away on November 2, 2023. Almost a month passed, there wasn't a day or an hour, and it seems to me that there wasn't even 10 minutes that I didn't think about it. This is the most terrible loss in life. And after that you look at the world differently. My mother left suddenly. She went to the store and never came back. She was hit by a car at a pedestrian crossing. I want to forget that very day when my life was divided into before and after. I want to forget the funeral. I'm looking for the strength to move on. My work really helps to distract myself. Mom didn't want to grow old, but she never talked about death, so she didn't have time to grow old. Mom was 49 years old. After 9 days I saw her in my dream and she said that she was fine. She misses us very much. I hope this is really true. Take care of your loved ones. Say I love you as often as possible, because tomorrow there may not be such an opportunity. Strength and recovery to everyone who has lost their parents. We are their continuation.
Exactly 5 years ago I lost my mother, and I still can't get over it. I wish you live happily ever after. Don't think about death, but think about how to live your life with dignity. No one knows what it's like to die, but losing a loved one is a hellish pain. May God grant you all health and long life.
My heart was torn apart by the loss of my mother. I was broken morally and spiritually. I couldn't come to terms with the loss for a long time. I am sure that only thanks to the support of my mother from there, the willpower and fortitude came to pull myself together. Thank you, dear, for your help, care, and guardianship of your son. For opening the eyes of many things and many people. I feel your support and presence nearby. You are forever in my heart and my soul.
I was dying of a heart attack. It didn't hurt, it wasn't scary. Everything is somehow slow. My husband was as pale as snow. The ambulance doctor is in a fog. They saved me. The ambulance suddenly arrived in 2 minutes. The ambulance was just passing along our street at that time. I was lucky. But my mother died in my arms. And everything became so clear and simple. That life is short, that everything is vanity, that we need to say kind words to each other more often, that the main things in life are not things.
That's all for today. Subscribe to the channel, leave your comment or a story and activate the notification bell not to miss our new videos. Bye bye.